In 1978, a group of men walked into one of the most secure areas of New York's JFK Airport. They did not fire a single shot. They did not trigger any alarms. And they were inside for less than 2 hours. When they left, more than $5 million had vanished from an airport vault. At the time, it was the largest cash robbery in American history. This was not a crime of force. It was a crime of precision. This is the story of the Lufthansa heist. During the 1970s, John F. Kennedy International Airport was one of the busiest airports in the world. Every day, international airlines moved enormous amounts of cash through its cargo terminals. Much of that money came from overseas. Foreign currencies, airline earnings, and valuable shipments were temporarily stored inside secured airport vaults before being transported to banks. One airline in particular handled unusually large sums. Lufthansa. Behind reinforced doors, guarded by security personnel, millions of dollars sat overnight inside a vault at the airport. It was believed to be untouchable. But belief is not the same as security. The success of the Lufthansa heist began with information. A Lufthansa cargo employee knew exactly when large shipments arrived. He knew where the money was stored. And more importantly, he knew the weaknesses in the system. The alarm system was outdated. The guards followed predictable routines. And certain doors could be accessed without raising immediate suspicion. This information quietly made its way into criminal circles. Once it did, the idea of the perfect heist began to take shape. A small, disciplined crew was assembled. Each person had a specific role. There were planners. There were drivers. And there were men responsible for handling the vault. Nothing was left to chance. The goal was not speed alone. It was silence. No gunfire. No panic. No unnecessary attention. The plan depended on timing and trust. If even one thing went wrong, everything would collapse. In the early hours of December 11, 1978, the plan was put into motion. The crew arrived at the Lufthansa cargo terminal before dawn. Security personnel were restrained quickly and quietly. No alarms were triggered. No emergency calls were made. The crew moved directly to the vault. Inside, they found more money than expected. Stacks of cash. Foreign currency. Valuables meant to be transported later that morning. They loaded everything into vehicles and left the airport without resistance. By the time authorities realized something was wrong, the crew was already gone. What made the Lufthansa heist stand out was not just the amount of money taken. It was the absence of chaos. No alarms echoed through the terminal. No police response followed immediately. Everything happened quietly. The crew understood the environment better than the system designed to protect it. They knew where technology was weak. They knew human behavior was predictable. And they used that knowledge with precision. When airport staff arrived later that morning, the scale of the crime became clear. Millions of dollars were missing. Federal investigators were called in immediately. Security failures were exposed. The vault was secure on paper, but not in practice. Despite intense investigation, leads were limited. There were no clear witnesses. No usable security footage. And no immediate suspects who could explain where the money went. Investigators faced a unique problem. There was no obvious starting point. No forced entry. No surveillance footage showing faces. No witnesses who could clearly identify what happened. Every traditional investigative tool failed. The crime had been designed to leave nothing behind. And that is why the case remained unresolved for so long. Years later, some individuals connected to the crime were identified. But most of the money was never recovered. No extravagant lifestyles appeared. No obvious spending trails were found. The cash seemed to disappear completely. The Lufthansa heist became legendary. Not because of violence, but because of planning. It forced major changes in airport security. And it became a case study in how information can be more powerful than force. What surprised investigators most was how ordinary the operation looked from the outside. There were no dramatic escapes. No high-speed chases. No visible signs of panic. The crew blended into the routine of the airport. This made the crime difficult to emotionally process. People expected chaos. Instead, they found silence. The Lufthansa heist became more than a robbery. It became a warning. A warning that large systems often depend on small assumptions. That security can fail when trust is misplaced. And that sometimes, the greatest vulnerability is not technology, but information shared with the wrong people. Stories like the Lufthansa heist continue to fascinate people decades later. Not because they glorify crime, but because they reveal how complex systems can fail quietly. They remind us that history is often shaped not by force, but by moments when preparation meets opportunity. And sometimes, the most significant events leave behind the fewest traces. The Lufthansa heist was not just about stolen money. It was about timing, trust, and knowing exactly where a system would fail. Even today, it remains one of the most studied robberies in American history. If you enjoy real stories about famous heists and true crime documentaries, subscribe to Heist Files TV. More stories are coming.